Hi everyone, this is Casey Astrology. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video on the total lunar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio, which is going to be happening on the day of May 15th or May 16th, depending on where you are in the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about the planets that are involved in this eclipse, and I'm also going to be sharing a real life example of this Scorpio and Taurus axis involving the nodes, so the North Node and the South Node, or Rahu and Ketu as I like to call them as a Vedic astrologer. I'm going to be sharing and discussing a real life example that has taken place recently involving the nodes and this Scorpio and Taurus axis. First I'm going to talk a little bit about the planets that are involved in this eclipse. And I'm going to kind of go into what it means to have these conjunctions in your chart, especially when they have so much emphasis put on them, such as they would when they're involved in an eclipse, because the energies of lunar and solar eclipses are said to the effects of the eclipses are said to last for up to 6 months after the eclipse. I'm going to begin by talking about the Taurus axis of this eclipse. So in the sign of Taurus, as part of this full moon lunar eclipse, there is the Sun, Rahu, or the North Node, and Uranus. These three planets are going to be conjunct in the sign of Taurus during this eclipse. So when Rahu and the Sun, or the North Node and the Sun, are in a conjunction, it's said to indicate an evolutionary urge to develop one's personality, individuality, creative will, and expression. And the expression of confidence and power is what they hope to realize. However, this only happens when they become secure in their individuality. The house placement of Taurus in one's natal chart during the total lunar eclipse will show where a person is generally self-willed and appears magnetic, powerful, and confident. However, what the person actually feels is entirely different from that. They generally will feel very insecure and not stable or grounded in themselves when it has to do with the expression of Taurus in their natal chart. Because Taurus represents the resources that we possess, which can be used to get our needs met in a concrete way, especially relating to the skills, talents, and natural creative resources that we possess. So it's the skills and resources that can be used to validate us materially. And that validation is something that we can do in the world. So Rahu in Taurus is looking for material validation because essentially there is a void or a darkness in receiving that material validation from the world. However, when Ketu, or the South Node, is in Scorpio, and especially with the moon as it is in this eclipse, the person will want to be emotionally totally self-sufficient and self-resourceful, because Ketu doesn't want that validation when it's in Scorpio, because especially when it's with the moon, it's going to not want that validation because K2 conjunct the moon in Scorpio is going to be extremely emotionally introverted, and so it's not going to want to accept the help of the things outside of itself, validating it materially. However, they really do need that validation. K2 in Scorpio conjunct the moon is already emotionally self-sufficient, as I said, because the work has already been done to put a lot of emphasis on their emotional security. So that means wherever this total lunar eclipse in Scorpio falls in your chart, this house cusp will show where you're extremely contained emotionally and emotionally self-sufficient. And so the events triggered through this eclipse and the 6-month period following it will push you to be emotionally responsible for yourself. And the house cusps you have contained within Scorpio will show you who it is that forces you to rely on yourself emotionally and to be completely emotionally self-contained. So I'll give you an example of this playing out in a house. So, for example, if Scorpio is your 3rd house in your chart, and if you're a Virgo rising, or you don't have to be a Virgo rising, if you just have Scorpio in your chart and it has the 3rd house cusp in it, circumstances will make it so that you will experience some emotional upset during this eclipse, or in the time around or leading up to this eclipse, and in the month following the eclipse especially. You'll probably experience some emotional upset due to your siblings, your colleagues, your community, associates, neighbors, etc. It's going to be any of those people in your life. However, once you do experience this upset with them, instead of feeling the need to reach out to communicate with one of these people about what you're feeling and what went wrong, instead of wanting to call them on the phone to vent or to ask someone else for help or to hash things out even with these people, you're instead going to feel the need to not do that, because again, the moon conjunct K2 in Scorpio will generally cause you to be extremely emotionally introverted and self-sufficient. And so you'll prefer to get through your own pains by yourself by doing your own self-healing work, self-introspection, and research. And this could be taking a course of some sort, or learning a new skill, or involving yourself in training through workshops, webinars, boot camps, things like that, because the 3rd house is responsible for initiatory instruction. And Scorpio is a sign that very much wants to rely on its own emotional resources to get through its problems, rather than going outside of itself to deal with its issues. And then it's able to transmute those problems by doing the inner healing work. So yeah, that's how this axis could play out for you if you have Scorpio in your 3rd house. So now I'm going to discuss and talk about a extreme real life example of this Taurus Scorpio nodal themes playing out this past week in the American news outlets. So it was reported that a prison break took place in America in which a highly respected correctional officer or prison guard helped plan and mastermind the escape of an inmate under her watch. And it was revealed after the escape that the duo were romantically involved for at least 2 years. Now, I don't have the birth data of either fugitive. However, I did pull a chart for the prison guard named Vicky White, who facilitated the escape. And based on her reported age in the news of 56, and using the date of their capture, I was able to pull up a chart. So I pulled up a chart for May 9th, 1966. And looking at this chart, we can see that the nodes are conjunct the current nodal transit to a very close orb. In fact, K2 on May 9th, 1966 is at 25 degrees of Scorpio, and Rahu is at 25 degrees of Taurus, which is exactly conjunct the moon and the sun respectively within this present day total lunar eclipse, which is occurring on, again, May 15th or May 16th, 2022, depending on where you are in the world. So in my opinion, Vicky White, the prison guard who planned the escape of inmate Casey White, is a perfect example of someone who really spent a lot of time cultivating their South Node in Scorpio. This is because the South Node in Scorpio person, again, is someone who puts a lot of emphasis on their emotional security naturally. They're extremely emotionally strong, emotionally contained, and self-sufficient. And this is exactly what Vicky White was as a person. She was an extremely successful correctional officer in the sheriff's department that she worked at. On a personal level, she was single and didn't have any children. And it was revealed that she was divorced but continued to live with her ex-husband, who had Parkinson's disease, until he passed away earlier this year. So in that way, she was showing that extremely emotional introvertedness, being emotionally contained, and self-sufficiency. At the time of the escape, she had been living with her mother for a few months. And by all accounts from the people that she worked with and her employers, Vicky was a decorated employee who had won many Employee of the Year awards during her 17 years working at the prison, and many of her coworkers looked up to her as a mother figure. So her K2 in Scorpio really ensured that she appeared emotionally responsible for herself, as we can see, meaning that when she was upset, she didn't seem to share it with her colleagues, friends, or even her family members, which is why the people that knew her and the people who didn't know her, like the world in general, was so shocked when they learned that Vicky was involved with this escape and the planning and execution of the escape. The unfortunate thing about K2 is that regardless of where it is in someone's chart and what sign it's in, it's something that we've never really perfected, but in our own little world, we believe it to be perfect and working for us. However, with K2, we're not seeing the bigger picture, and we're not seeing the fact that it's actually not working at all. But in our own little worlds, we feel like it is. So Vicky White became so emotionally introverted and isolated, almost to a fault, that she was not able to see past her emotional needs and her material needs of Rahu and Taurus were therefore neglected, because it is important to take care of the emotional needs, but we still have a physical body that has material needs as well. And we can't really ignore that we have a body, because if we do, and our body is ignored, and our material needs of that body are ignored, emotionally we're going to have a breakdown, because there has to be an equal give and take and push and pull between our nodal axis, so between this Taurus and Scorpio. And in Vicky White's case, she was materially blessed in a financial sense, so she was getting that Rahu and Taurus axis met through material stability, because again, she was really decorated correctional officer, and I think she was second in line in her workplace, so she had a lot of power there. She had been there for 17 years. She had a lot of respect from her colleagues, and I believe a lot of the inmates really liked her as a person as well. So yeah, she did have that material usefulness in that way coming from Rahu and Taurus. However, what she was lacking and ultimately craved, and what led her to do this, was that she lacked the material usefulness of another person, like a partner who could tell her that, you know, you're beautiful, or I love you, or gave her gifts to make her feel good. That was something that wasn't readily available in Vicky White's life. And clearly, because of Rahu and Taurus, it was something that she needed in her life. Again, because she lacked that, that's ultimately what led her to turn to risk her reputation, her retirement, and ultimately her life to be with this person. Rahu and Taurus people tend to suffer feelings of lack of self-worth, and that feeling is there essentially because of not being validated materially. And so in Vicky White's case, it was a little bit different in that, again, we knew that she did experience some material validation through her career. And being told that we're good at something, that we have a skill or a resource, that is what a Rahu and Taurus person really craves, because it validates them materially, and it validates to that person that they are able to do something in the world, and they have a usefulness about them, and they're not useless, essentially. And we know that Vicky White did have that. However, Rahu and Taurus, again, it wants to be validated on a physical level as well. And being materially validated means being given things materially, such as presents, good food, a healthy family life, validation from our friends and family, things like that, which make us have a sense of self-worth. And that was what Vicky White was lacking in her life, because, again, she was single and had no children or family around her other than her elderly mother, is what we know according to the news reports. So she didn't have a lot of validation from other people in her life other than what little material validation she got through her career. And we know that she actually was about to retire. So there was this void that she was about to face in her life where she wasn't going to be getting that validation through her career anymore. And she didn't have the friends or family or physical validation from an actual person around her to fill that void. And so there was a real sense of loneliness from what we can tell. And the validation that Rahu in Taurus craves can be something as simple as having someone around who tells you that you're beautiful, because that validates your body. And when someone tells you, I love you, it's coming from another person again. So they're validating your body as well, because it's another person in a physical body telling you that they love you. And so it becomes much more meaningful and validating to your emotional body. So it's like getting a material gift, which is Rahu in Taurus, which in turn validates you emotionally, which is the Ketu in Scorpio. And so essentially, when people with physical bodies tell us something, there is a material usefulness or validation to it that we crave. And that's what Taurus is about. And so when someone has Rahu in Taurus, as Vicky White likely did, they don't get that validation. It doesn't come easily to them. Or the case may be that if they do get it, they're so closed off to it due to being so emotionally introverted with Ketu and Scorpio that oftentimes they just won't receive the compliment. And so they'll either shrug it off or not listen or pretend that they didn't hear the person who's giving them the compliment. And this is because Ketu in Scorpio is just not receptive to hearing good things about themselves, usually. And it seems like Vicky White may have been this way as well until she met the inmate Casey White, who she began a relationship with and ultimately became a fugitive for. Now, when Vicky White and Casey were finally captured on May 9th, 2022, after 10 days on the run, Vicky ended up taking her own life by shooting herself in the head before the police could take her into custody. Now, I feel like that was a final and defiant act spurred on by her Ketu in Scorpio. And this is because by doing that, instead of having to face being captured and sent to prison, which would cause her more material lack in her life and further deplete any sense of self-worth that she had remaining, which has to do with Rahu and Taurus, she instead chose to perfect her Ketu in Scorpio by taking her own life and ensuring that she took her emotional security to the grave with her, essentially. And this prevented her from having to stay behind and explain herself and why she was feeling how she was, and having to give the reasoning behind her actions. And she also no longer had to face the judgment and ridicule of her thoughts and actions from the public and her peers and family as well. And she didn't have to, by killing herself, she didn't have to sit through the criticism of other people towards her emotional lacks. And yeah, by doing that, everything she was thinking and feeling for the past 2 years while involved with Casey White will forever be unavailable to the public and kept private and confidential within the confines of Vicky White's mind when she was alive. So I imagine that that probably gave her K2 in Scorpio some small sliver of solace in her final moments, because she, through doing this act of taking her own life, she was finally able to perfect her emotionally introverted K2 world. However, it came at the expense of her reputation and all of the material security that she had amassed within her career through Rahu and Taurus. So, and I decided to share the Vicky White and Casey White story and give my interpretation of the astrology behind it, because the themes were so strongly related, in my opinion, to the themes of this total lunar eclipse in Scorpio. And yeah, the Scorpio and Taurus axis were very strong within Vicky White's actions, in my opinion. So I wanted to share with you one extreme way that this Scorpio-Taurus axis can play out when the nodes are sitting in these two signs, specifically the North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio. And if you watched my video on the astrology of Britney Spears and Lynn Spears, you'll notice that these themes are very similar to the Capricorn and Cancer nodal axis as well. The difference being that with Taurus and Scorpio, it's about material security versus emotional security. And that's because Taurus and Scorpio are fixed signs. And all of the fixed signs like Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius are security-centered signs. They want things that are fixed and stable and lasting and secure. And with the Capricorn and Cancer axis, it's all about material actions versus emotional actions. And that's because they're cardinal or movable signs, and movable signs like Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn, they're more concerned with actions instead of security. So yeah, that was all I wanted to say about this eclipse. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope that the energies of this eclipse serve you well, and that you can observe and work with these themes of emotional security versus material security now and over the next 6 months, which is how long the effects of the eclipse are said to last for. So if you're interested in booking a reading with me, you can check out my website, www.caseyAstrology.com, and the link will be in the description. Other than that, thank you for tuning in. If you liked the video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.